So yeah, that last video was about 8 minutes long, but QuickCapture is playing tricks tonight. But I'll pick up right where I left off. Once we call ourselves into question, our ability to know reality into question, we end up recognizing that actually we can't just discard with purpose and final causality and meaning, and that this picture that we may have thought we had, this knowledge we may have thought we had of a world which exists for the sake of nothing, is, if true, then it becomes a negation of ourselves. And the very fact that we can call ourselves into question, I think, is proof that that can't be the case. Because to actively, mentally question oneself, you must do so intentionally and purposefully and freely. And this is why so many of the existentialists say that only once you have questioned yourself, only once you have become a question to yourself, have you become a free and autonomous individual who's not merely brainwashed by the mass society. So the proof of free will is in the human being's ability to know thyself. And this isn't something we're simply given as human animals. This is something we have to achieve. And I think both Nietzsche and Kierkegaard recognize this necessity, that human beings are called by their very nature. Kierkegaard would say it's by God, but we don't have to use that word. It's just by our own intrinsic need to ask this question, who am I, and reach a satisfying answer, which even if it can't or isn't necessarily verbal or discursive, even so, it doesn't mean it's not a question without an answer, or it doesn't mean it's not a question with an answer. It's just an answer which comes on an experiential level. That's why I can't offer a rational definition of who or what I am. Consciousness can't be defined or explained, because it's an inward experience which one can have only out of their own volition, out of their own mental activity. But see, I think when we do this, when we call ourselves into question, there is this tendency to think that we exist as solitary individuals, as some subjective substance requiring nothing but itself in order to exist. And this can produce a lot of anxiety, a lot of tension, and this sense of alienation, which I think is obvious that both Nietzsche and Kierkegaard had, if you know anything about their actual lives. And so we have to be cognizant of this possibility, this potential of really deeply questioning oneself, because we can end up cornering ourselves with it in a perception of reality and ourselves in relation to reality, which is actually not the end of the story. And when we attempt to know thyself, we must go all the way through to the end, which is meaning past or through this sense of being an isolated I encased in the skull or somehow invisible to others. We must go through that and past that to the realization that what is conscious in myself is what is conscious in all, and that this artificial distinction between myself and being itself, or between the knower and the known, is just that. It's an artificial construction or conceptualization added to experience, to pure experience, or to pure reality, by our language, by our way of speaking, by our culture. And if we truly want to be free of that culture, of that mass mind assumption, then we must go through even the ego the sense of being a truly isolated individual, because that in itself is a social institution. The notion of being an encased solitary individual or an ego is also just as much part of that assumed knowledge given to us by others, by whoever we think has authority in our society. So this is a question, who am I, which runs deeper than the I. It's a question which leads to another further question, which is, who are we? Who are we, speaking beings in relation to one another within the larger being or reality? And so instead of this isolated, fragmented sense of self, we recognize our essential unity with everything that is. So hopefully this didn't get cut off again. And thanks for reading your paper, Phil. I really enjoyed it and learned something from it. These guys, Nietzsche and Kierkegaard, really, even if they don't show us how to attain this level of consciousness that they think the human being is called to accomplish, they certainly give us a personal record of their own attempt to do so, and we can all certainly learn vicariously through their trials and tribulations. So, yeah, thanks for listening.